Welcome into another edition of New Track Record Podcast from the WELT Studios. I'm Caleb Hatch. Justin Kinney joining us from his parlor in his home as we are ready to preview. It is finally here, the 2026 NTT IndyCar Series season. Hello, Justin. Good morning.
Hello, Caleb. Yes, just in the parlor or the sitting room, whatever you want to call it, in the expansive Kenny complex here in Huntington, Indiana. Beautiful weather today, hitting 60 degrees maybe, but even nicer in St. Pete, where we get the season started this weekend.
Yeah, it looks like the rain should hold off for practice and qualifying, and then race day looks perfect, 80 degrees. I mean, that sounds amazing this time of year for the winter we've gone through. Thankfully, we're getting at least a couple nice days, but Sunday looks brutal for us back here at home. But so we'll go through all the categories. Champion, Indy 500 winner, Rookie of the Year, biggest surprise, biggest disappointment, kind of any other categories we want to add in or any other bold predictions. And we'll preview St. Pete. And, man, it's exciting to have a race weekend here. We've had a mostly positive offseason. Prima not showing up notwithstanding, but that honestly was kind of a foregone conclusion, it seemed, for quite some time. So everything is cheery and bright, and now we got to make predictions that are sure to be wrong by the end of the season.
Yeah, everybody enters the weekend with optimism, and we'll see which teams, which drivers still have that optimism intact, not just after this weekend, Caleb, but the first 3 weeks of the season. We have back-to-back-to-back race weekends to start the season, so jumping right into it, it's nice as opposed to starting at St. Pete and waiting a month for race number 2.
For sure. So let's start with Champion. I think this will be a pretty easy one. I'm not going to overthink it like I've done for years. I'd love to see a non-Penske Ganassi champion, but you know what? I'm going with Alex Palou.
Out of left field.
Right?
Pretty crazy pick. It's tough not to pick Alex Palou, right? 3 straight, 4 of the last 5. And when you look at just what he's been able to do consistently and a dominant performance, winning the championship by 196 points last year, I hope it's not that bad this year, but it's tough not to pick Alex Palou. But just to be different, I will go Pato Award.
Okay.
The reign of Ganassi and Penske will end. And we've been waiting for McLaren to break out and break through. And every year it feels like they're getting closer and closer and closer. And maybe this is the year where they win the Indianapolis 500 with Pato Award. But I'll go one step further just to be different and say Pato Award ends the dominance of the top 2 teams, captures the championship, and thus there will be no excuse for 2027 to not have a race in Mexico or
I like that
champion Pato Award.
I like the sound of that. Quick over under on Alex Palou race wins. I'm setting it at 4.5, but I'm actually going to take the under. What say you?
Wow, you're going to take the under at 4.5. I was thinking more 5.5 when you first mentioned that, and I could be talked into taking the under at 5.5. But with 4.5, I'm going to take the over.
Okay. All right. We shift from champion to Indy 500 winner, and this one I bet will have similar answers unless you're trying to be different, which you do try to do. I'm going to keep it simple, and I've reached the same status as the driver is now a 2-time Indy 500 winner in Joseph Newgarden. I've reached that same status with Pato Award, where I'm just going to pick him every year until he wins the Indy 500.
It felt like that with people with Marco Andretti, right? For a while, they just kept picking Marco to win it because they're like, well, eventually he has to win it. Well, it never did happen. But I think it's a sensible pick, considering he seemingly gets closer and closer with every passing year. Despite finishing 3rd last year, 2nd the year before, he has finishes of 2nd, and 3rd in the last 4 years, a 24th mixed in there. He's got to break through at some point. So I like to pick. To be different, because as you said, I like to be different sometimes, I will go with Alex Palou to repeat as a champion of the Indianapolis 500.
Okay, I see it. I get it. Like, here's the biggest thing in the predictions and why I think we both believe Alex Palou is going to continue to dominate overall. The fact that nothing's changing on the cars, right? That the hybrid unit's there for the full season. There's no changes. Like, it's the same car that we've seen for a couple of years now. So it's kind of hard to pick against a guy when nothing's changed with the formula, right? I mean, you have a couple new races, Markham, Arlington, Toronto, and DC. But overall, you look at the schedule, he's still going to be the guy to beat on the road courses. He's improved so much on the ovals. Street courses, he can hold his own. Like, there's not much incentive to think something different's going to happen.
Well, that coupled with everybody else seemingly changing everything to try to catch Alex Palou, or at least close the gap. I mean, Joseph Newgarden is one of those rare instances where everything is intact for him. But you look at Scott McLaughlin, you look at, obviously David Malukas being new at Penske. Of course, the consistency with Scott Dixon, but looking outside Chip Ganassi Racing, everybody is trying to find that formula to close the gap with Alex Palou in particular. And the more things change, the more things stay the same. The more that other teams change, the more things stay the same at Chip Ganassi. I just think there's going to be a learning curve for a lot of these new combinations, whether it's driver, engineer, pit crew, whoever, chief strategist, all that stuff. And as you mentioned, it just stays same old for not just the 10, but also the 9 at Ganassi. So I think it's reasonable to say Alex Palou is the favorite, but I don't think he dominates as much as he did last year. But part of that could be just wishful thinking on our part, right? We're just hoping it's not as dominant as last year. But if it happened again, we wouldn't be surprised.
It would be a surprise only because it's so hard to win and dominate in this series, right? It's not often we've had someone dominate the championship. I mean, Palou last year was one of the most dominant championships we've ever seen in our lifetimes in IndyCar. So that's the exception, not the rule, right? So I think that's probably what we're projecting here. Let's see. Moving on with our picks. Rookie of the Year. And I think this is a really enticing and intriguing rookie class with Kyle Collette, who was second in lights to Dennis Hauger, who, of course, dominated in lights. Mick Schumacher coming on board, where they just announced his sponsor and livery, at least for the first race weekend for this season. Cool red and black looking car. And Jaron Dimmendahl, who covers IndyCar from the Netherlands, posted that there's a chance that they have a full season sponsor after this race locked in. That's kind of the rumor, so we'll see. But it's good to see a cool livery on that car. This is a really, I mean, I feel like we're saying this more and more, but the rookie class, the talent level, this seems to be the best it's been in quite some time. I'm really excited. That said, Rookie of the Year is fascinating because Mick Schumacher obviously is raced in F1. He goes to Ray Hall. They're a team that we think should improve drastically over what they were last year in the last few years. Dennis Hauger dominated lights. He's with Dale Coyne Racing. Kyle Collette with AJ Foyt. They still have that Penske partnership. Collette finished well in lights second. He comes in, a Brazilian coming back into IndyCar full-time. So a lot of good storylines. I think on paper, you want to pick Schumacher or Hauger. Schumacher's going to have the most resource team. Hauger, of course, I would say is the most talented in terms of talent and experience. He's raced on a lot of these tracks, but I'm going to actually go with Kyle Collette, the young Brazilian, as my Rookie of the Year choice. One, they continue that Penske partnership. He's got Santino Ferrucci as a teammate. So in terms of teammates who can truly contend for top tens and sneak in a podium and maybe, just maybe, a race win, I feel like he's actually got the best teammates out of all the bunch on here. I think it's the second best team. I think Ray Hall, in terms of resources and everything, is probably the best team of the three. but I think Collette is sneaky good. He's quick. I also feel like I kind of called my shot on Collette going to Foyt after Nashville, so I'm just sticking with calling my shot here and saying he'll be Rookie of the Year.
I like the reasoning because Kyle Collette, to me, was the third choice for me in talking about Rookies of the Year. You look at Mick Schumacher, and he brings the most experience, obviously, especially at top-level racing in Formula One. But you look at the challenges that Mick Schumacher is going to have, namely on ovals. And then you look at road and street courses, of which this team isn't very good, let's be honest. They only had one top 5 finish last year, the entire team, and that was Graham Rahal at Portland. So we expect Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan to be better, but how much better from last year? They have so far to go to even be relevant towards the top end of the grid on a regular basis. So I'm not going to go Mick Schumacher, but I'm also not going to go Kyle Collette. I'm going to go Dennis Hauger. I know he's with Coyne, but we felt like Coyne made some tremendous strides last year. And I just, after watching this kid last year, 6 wins in Indy Lights, the wealth of experience he has in Formula 2, so you know he's going to be adept on the road and street courses, and then having that year in Lights to show his prowess on ovals, and he won. He didn't win it on an oval last year, but finished second in Iowa, second in Milwaukee. He was up there. I think he's my pick for Rookie of the Year, partly maybe because I'm really excited to see Dennis Hauger. I think within a couple of years he could be at a Power 4 team and really be one of the dudes from overseas that really makes an impact. I mean, can I go to Christian Lundgaard-esque type guy that can come over and land after a couple solid years at one of the big teams?
I don't think he's going to have to wait a couple years. I think he may only have to wait one season to be at a Power 4 team, if we're being honest. We could get to that a bit later in some of our predictions. But, you can't go wrong, though, with any of the three in terms of picking them because Schumacher has F1 experience. He's got the most resource team. Yes, the tracks are going to be new, but I don't know if the jump is going to be astronomical for him. Collette, obviously, he's stronger on the ovals, as you kind of mentioned. Second in Lights, obviously with a team partner with Penske. And then you have Dennis Hauger, who, yes, they do have that Andretti global partnership, but it's kind of a very bare bones partnership compared to, Penske, Foyt, or Ganassi and Meyer Shank, right? So it's kind of hard to really factor that in as a big aspect in terms of projecting for him. But in terms of talent and experience on the tracks and what he did in Lights last year, yeah, hands down, I mean, he's probably the obvious choice.
Yeah, it feels like that. But, the best thing about this rookie class is it's the best of both worlds, right? The top 2 finishers in Indy Lights have full-time rides. And then one of the top talents in Europe that's no longer is in Formula One is also a rookie. So when you look at the pipelines to IndyCar, the ladder is working, right? And then also the allure of IndyCar from over in Europe is working. So that's the beauty of this class. It's small, but it's very, very talented, and it shows that the strategies for IndyCar in terms of luring talent both from within its own ladder but also overseas is as effective as it continues to be. It's still working. And we've had those questions, right, in recent past is the ladder, quote unquote, working? Because we've seen other drivers not get rides after showing out in Indy Lights. And so it's very reassuring that the top 2 finishers are getting rides for 2026.
All right, let's get to some other categories. Let's start with our dark horse championship contender. So a driver that's not, Palou, Pato, Who am I missing? Dixon, like kind of outside of the big three that we expect to really contend. I'm going to go with Christian Lundgaard. And, you know, we've kind of been hyping him up for a while on this show, but I'm going to be bold and say that Lundgaard wins multiple races. He gets a podium on an oval, which I know a lot of you are like, oh, come on. But I think he's going to make the jump this year in terms of being a true championship contender at McLaren. I know Pato's already there, right? But I think they really have two legit shots at winning a championship, and I don't think every team can say that. Like, Ganassi has Palou and Dixon. Penske, I don't even know because of what happened last year.
One?
I guess one, and I'm not even sure which one. And then you look at Andretti, and I would say for now, you do have Power and Kirkwood, but they're kind of like 1A, 1B. I'm not sure which one would go before the other at this point. So I'm going to go Christian Lundgaard as far as my dark horse championship contender. And in terms of a driver outside the big four, being someone who could sneak and do something, I'm going to go with Marcus Armstrong as in terms of drivers outside the big four in terms of finishing high in the championship. What say you?
Yeah, I think Marcus Armstrong's a good pick, and especially with that with MSR really kind of looking at this season as making a considerable jump with Armstrong and Felix Rosenqvist. I'm going to go Kyle Kirkwood.
Okay.
As a dark horse for the championship. We saw him last year, his first multi-win season in IndyCar. Got
second.
3 dubs. What's that? Second.
I think it's his second.
In 2023, he won a couple races.
Yeah, he won Long Beach and, I forget the other race in his second full-time season. Nashville, yes, I think that's right. Yes.
In 2023. He still is seeking his, no, he won a Gateway last year, so he has shown that he can win on both disciplines, or at least all 3 disciplines. Now, consistency was lacking, particularly down the stretch last year. That's where it kind of came apart for Kyle Kirkwood. But the first half of the season, and then obviously Indy was an issue, first half of the season is where he got his 3 wins last year. Can he find the consistency across all 18 races to be a championship contender? He can win races. He can win races how we feel anywhere. I think we're finally seeing the dominance that we saw through the ladder when he won F2000 and then Pro 2000 and then Lights in dominant fashion, right? I think we're starting to see the Kyle Kirkwood that feels comfortable everywhere and is confident everywhere, and wouldn't be surprised if it's another multi-win season, but also a season where we see Kyle Kirkwood maybe finish in the top 3 in the championship. And, remember last year, like I said, he was very much in the race early in the season, faded late, and still finished 4th in the championship.
He was the only driver other than Alex Palou to win through like the first half of the season. So, I think to me, Kirkwood, I wouldn't even say he's a dark horse at this point. I think he's a legitimate. You look at the short list of 5 or 6, you have Dixon, Palou, you have Kirkwood, you have Pato, and then after that, you could convince me on Power, you could convince me on McLaughlin, Lundgaard. Like, I feel like that those final couple spots are up for debate, but to me, Kirkwood is solidly in that top 5 or 6 list of championship contenders going into the season. Who would be your outside the big 4 choice to crash the party?
Yeah, my outside the big 4 to crash the party. It's always difficult to identify. Somebody like that can really be in competition for 18 races. But you look at the strides that Christian Rasmussen made in 2025 in year 2, gets his first win at Milwaukee. He was very good at Indianapolis last year, coming to the field. I think a top 5, top 6 finish, something like that. The investments that ECR made during last season, we knew wouldn't pay many dividends in 2025, but could we see that in 2026 and him being really in that conversation? So Christian Rasmussen, to me, another guy in his mid-20s that has worked his way through the ladder and shown tremendous improvement from one year to the next in his 2 seasons in IndyCar. I think year 3 really could be a true breakout, a top 10 finish in the points definitely, and if everything goes right, maybe picks up a win, maybe picks up 2 wins, and could challenge for a top 5 points finish.
Yeah, you look at Rasmussen, I believe he had the 3rd most points on ovals last year. I think the concern is not the ovals, where he's become one of the fiercest and most polarizing among IndyCar drivers. I think one of the most exciting among fans to watch on ovals, but it's the road and street courses where he has just 2 top 10s through 2 seasons, a 9th at Mid-Ohio in 2024, and then a 9th at Laguna Seca in 2025. So I think that's maybe the one thing that would hold me back on that aspect. But yeah, on the ovals, which make up a full third of the schedule, yeah, he's definitely one of the best in that discipline, and I could see him sneaking into the top 10 for sure. Let's move on. So we've done kind of dark horse. What's your biggest surprise for this season?
Are we talking in terms of drivers, in terms of anything?
Probably in terms of drivers.
Okay. My biggest surprise for me, this is interesting. I don't necessarily want to pile on Team Penske. We're expecting a bounce-back season for Scott McLaughlin. Everybody remembers, the season he had last year, and Indianapolis, obviously the standout in terms of very much a microcosm of what happened to him right throughout the entire season. Had a couple podiums to end the season at Milwaukee and Nashville to give him some semblance of momentum. But I'll go once again, Scott McLaughlin winless in the 2026 IndyCar season. That is my surprise prediction.
Wow. That is a big surprise. And wow. Dang. Okay. I'm going to go, so kind of along those lines, same team, but my surprise is that David Malukas is actually going to have the most wins among Team Penske drivers for 2026. I think he wins 2 races.
Wowzers.
I think you look at...
I don't hate it.
You look at his speed. I mean, in terms of raw speed, that's never been an issue for him in qualifying. It's just about consistency, right? And look, he's already outstanding on the ovals. I think we're probably underselling that he's going to be a legitimate contender for the Indy 500 in May. Every oval race, especially the short ovals, he's going to look really, really good. In terms of speed, he's found a lot of pace on the road and street courses. The wrist injury is so far long gone at this point. Like, it's time to put the head down and get to work. And I think David Malukas is going to have a top 10 point season. I think he's going to have the most wins among Penske drivers. I could see him picking up a pole position or 2 along the way. Like, I think we're underselling this partnership. And I know that a lot of us feel that Power maybe deserved another year, but I think Penske, they're a step ahead, right? And I think this was the move they had to make to be a step ahead and really shake things up. And I think this will shake things up. I think Malukas will be very, very impressive in 2026.
I think we've as much praise as we gave it, we still undervalue the performance that David Malukas had with Foyt last year.
Right.
Finishing 11th in points for Foyt, and I know they've improved, but it's just insanity. I just, the runner-up finish at Indy stands out, of course, but just so impressive at places like Iowa and Milwaukee. And I know he had a good run at Road America, but, just being competitive nearly everywhere. And when's the last time we could say that for a driver competing with Foyt? I don't care if they have Penske support or not. And so I'm with you in terms of a guy that already looking towards this weekend in terms of guys that I'm looking at, non-Alex Palou, that could pick up a win, David Malukas is on my list. I mean, what better time to pick up win number one in the series than your first race with Penske and showing that you are the new alpha at Team Penske. So I think he's a dude that's going to show that this year. The uncertainty around Joseph Newgarden and maybe to a lesser extent Scott McLaughlin, I think looms larger and larger throughout the season if Penske struggles. Meanwhile, David Malukas is the future at Team Penske and wouldn't be surprised, to your point, if he shows it in year one with the team.
All right, so we've gone from biggest surprise. I guess this yours kind of was more of a disappointment, but we can pick a different one though. So biggest disappointment among teams and drivers for 2026.
I look at Nolan Siegel as a guy that it just almost feels inevitable what's going to happen to him, and I wish it wasn't that way. But it just feels like we're heading towards a divorce there. McLaren has raised its expectations considerably, rightfully so, as it's grown more and more comfortable in the IndyCar Series. Tony Kanaan has really come in and changed a lot of things for the better. And then don't discount the fact that McLaren just won driver and constructor championships in Formula One. And that raises the expectations across the entire organization, not just in Formula One. And if you have a driver that's competing for leader circle, that's not good enough at McLaren. It's not even close. I mean, even outside of the top 10 isn't good enough, let alone 22nd, as Nolan Siegel was last year. Nolan Siegel could show considerable improvement this year, Caleb, and still finish 13th, 14th in the standings and be out at the end of the season, because that's not what McLaren is expecting. So I think Nolan Siegel is better this year, but it won't be enough to keep that seat.
I think the statement that Tony Kanaan said that, it's kind of like a top 10 or bust season, I feel like that's a little unfair for Siegel, but I understand they're a team, like they need 3 race-winning capable championship, title contending drivers, and Siegel just simply has not done enough. And they were caught flat-footed with the Alex Palou drama. Let's not forget that. So they lost, sponsorship, and the good news is that lawsuit between Palou and McLaren have been settled out of court, so we don't have to talk about that anymore after this week. But I think Siegel did come with some funding, obviously, to kind of fill some of the gaps. But you look at what he's done, to me, top 15, 16 should be enough, but that's not the standard they're trying to set there. And with rumors of Joseph Newgarden potentially moving on from Penske after this year, Marshall Pruitt, Racer.com had a story where McLaren could certainly target a guy like Joseph Newgarden. That would make a lot of sense. And maybe Joseph Newgarden's interested because McLaren could pay him $4 or $5 million a season, and they wouldn't bat an eye at that cost, right? So I think that's another interesting aspect here of this. For Siegel's sake, I hope he at least shows flashes and gets a chance. Maybe if it doesn't work out in McLaren, gets a chance at a smaller team to have a true opportunity to learn and grow. I mean, you got to forget the kid's 21 years old, right? So
right.
That's the part that's hard. He's 21 years old, but when you're in one of those seats, you got to perform, and that's just how the sport works. So that will be an interesting thing to watch. I hope for his sake he can get it done, but asking for a top 10 seems like a stretch indeed. So I'm going to go a 2-part for mine. One,
okay,
and they're going to center around the same team. One, this is Marcus Ericsson's last full-time IndyCar season. I think the struggles we've seen, I think there's maybe a small step forward, but I don't think we see him back full-time in IndyCar next year. I do think he'll be back for Indy 500s, obviously, or other opportunities. I think it'd be silly for him to not be an Indy 500 driver for a team to hire if he's on the open market. I think Dennis Hauger steps in that seat for 2027. And then the second part, centered around the same team, Will Power. I think there's a lot of maybe unrealistic expectations for Power going into the season. You're with a new team, for one, or you've been with Penske forever. You're learning the Honda engine, which you haven't driven since everyone drove Hondas back in 2006 to 2011, that era. So the last time you drove a Honda engine was what, 2011? And a lot has changed since then. They didn't have turbos back then, for one. I just think you're looking at Power as a guy who's going to learn things. I still think he'll be competitive. Like, I still think he can pick up a pole position or two. I think he wins a race. I don't think he wins multiple races. I think there's just a lot of hype. And also, you look at him and Dixon, like, it's hard to be competitive in this series when, you have guys in their mid to late 20s that are essentially, they're the new class of title contenders. And I think Power is certainly still a top 10 driver, no doubt, and maybe on the upper half of the top 10, but I don't think he is a true championship contender in his first year at Andretti.
I mean, you look at it, and I'm with you in terms of the hype around Will Power and not necessarily understanding it completely, especially for a team that hasn't won a championship in so long. And now all of a sudden we're supposed to buy into this. Will Power's going to come in and be a championship contender with Andretti. I also, when you talk about disappointments, look at Andretti as a whole. And the expectations from when Michael Andretti owned this team to the ownership group now, and Michael Andretti had high expectations, but it's astronomical now.
Yes.
And for each year that this team goes without being a title contender or winning a title or winning a 500 is even worse. And it compounds things. You have to go back to, Takuma Sato, since the last time this team won the Indianapolis 500.
Correct,
just off the top of my head. Let alone a championship, Ryan Hunter-Reay, 13 years ago. And you look at his lineup, and I talked up Kyle Kirkwood for good reason, but you mentioned Marcus Ericsson and the disappointment that he's been. And you look at Will Power, and while he's re-energized and maybe looser, and they've told him, hey, you can be more yourself, you don't have to be Penske perfect, he's still 44 years old. And outside of Scott Dixon, this has become a young man's sport at the current time, right? I mean, in terms of competitiveness and running for championships. So for me, for Will Power, I think he enjoys his job more this year, at least early on. But if the results don't come, I think you're going to see same old Will Power in terms of crabby and cranky and all that. And we love that side of Will Power. But I'm with you. I have a hard time seeing that this is a resurgent Will Power with Andretti Global.
For sure. I think that's like the biggest thing is like just because he's on a new team, like this is a team that outside of last season is still behind what Penske has done for, the past few years. And Andretti had that hot streak at the 500. Remember, I mean, they won in 14, 16, and 17, and they haven't won an Indy 500 since. So that is, they're asking him to do a lot of lifting. Yes, he's experienced. He's won an Indy 500. He's won IndyCar titles. Colton Herta couldn't say that. Colton Herta best finish was second in the championship. Yeah. Now he's off to F2 where he has actually done quite well in preseason testing. But he's got a big ask ahead of him over there. And I think maybe we're putting too much hype on Power because of his resume and maybe not enough focus on where he's at right now, where he's still a really good driver. He's still a top 10 IndyCar driver, but he's a fringe championship contender at this point at best and could win you a race or two. I don't see him as a guy who's ripping off 3, 4, 5 race wins in a season.
We'd love to see it, but I think when you look at that team, the expectations that you mentioned, you feel more confident that that's Kyle Kirkwood that's going to achieve that, not Will Power.
For sure. All right, let's get to one of the fun predictions, and it's first-time race winner. And last year, I believe we had one, and that was Christian Rasmussen, right? I'm not forgetting anyone else who was a first-time race winner?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the race winner list was short. It was Palou, Kirkwood, Dixon, Pato, Power, Rasmussen, and Newgarden, and we had three different winners in the final three races who were new winners. Otherwise, it would have been a much shorter list. So, first-time race winner in 2026. Do we have one, and who are they?
Well, the obvious pick is David Malukas, right?
Yes.
I just feel like it's inevitable. I think maybe one of the biggest surprises at the end of the year would be if David Malukas doesn't have a win.
Yes, I agree.
Do
you think we have another race winner, first-time race winner, other than David Malukas? Because I think we both agree that's almost a lock.
Yeah, I feel that's the lock. I think maybe a guy that this time last year we were saying he better show out or he could be out of the seat for 2026 was Kippen Simpson. And we felt like he performed incredibly well in year two for Chip Ganassi Racing. Is it out of the realm of possibility that Kippen Simpson gets a win this year?
It's bold, but I like it. I like it. That's bold.
I mean, he's with a power team, third year with a power team, had flashes. Last year, 3 top 5 finishes at a podium at Toronto. I don't expect him to be in the conversation for a top 5, top 8 points finish. But could Kippen Simpson pick up a win this year? Maybe. I'm going to be boring and just I'm going with Armstrong. I think Meyer-Shank's got to get a race win. You look at their lineup and what they've done. I mean, the outright pace is there. The results were starting to check in last year as the season went along. They got to get a race win this year. I think that's important for that team, and I'm going to say Armstrong gets it done. And then the other driver, the sounding that team still has just one win. Obviously, there's a
right.
One. I don't know if the team's around still if they don't get that one, but it's been a long time since they got that win with Elio.
For sure. So Armstrong is my second pick. I'm on the fence with Foster, but I just don't know if Rahal as a team is quite there yet. But he will definitely, I think, challenge for some wins toward the end. Any other predictions that we missed here down the stretch? I mean, I feel like we covered the bulk of everything. I guess what team challenges the Big Four in terms of having the best finish?
Challenging the Big Four. I think you mentioned it in terms of you look at Meyer-Shank and Marcus Armstrong in particular. You look at Felix Rosenqvist and, you talk about guys that maybe need a good year. And while they like Felix Rosenqvist a lot at Meyer-Shank, and he was very good, particularly early in the season last year, 6th place finish in the points. He hasn't won since 2020, that lone win at Road America. So could he be a guy that can get win number 2 this year? And then that would really help that team, in my opinion, really take that next step, get another win, and potentially challenge, like you mentioned, that Big Four. And you mentioned Marcus Armstrong's talent. So I'll go Shank as maybe the team that can crash the Big Four party. What about you?
I think that's the obvious choice. I don't think there's really another team that I would even put remotely in that category. I think ECR made some huge strides last year, but they have a long way to go for me to feel confident they're going to challenge on racetracks beyond the ovals. That seems to be the concern, where I just don't know if they have the pace to really challenge on those non-oval tracks. So, yeah, I think Shank is my pick as well in terms of joining that list. And I mean, you look at it, 6th with Rosenqvist, 8th with Armstrong. They're already solidly better than, Penske when you look at kind of combined results last season. So, I mean, that kind of goes to show you, 1, how much Penske struggled last year, but also 2, how good Shank was in terms of being consistent. But I think getting race win or wins is that next step for 2026. All right. So with that, any other predictions you have to make?
Across the field, I think it's a captivating field. I just think everybody is hoping that we don't see another dominant year at Alex Blow. It's aligning like it very much could be, but he's due some bad luck, right? You guys
right.
have some bad luck sometimes here or there. And all you need is that at a couple races to really tighten things up in the championship. So I think that's what we're hoping. When we saw an actually entertaining run down the stretch in Formula One, we're so used to laughing at Formula One as though the championship's wrapped up by 2/3 through the season and it's obvious who's going to win. That was the season that IndyCar had last year, and it was not what Formula One had. So the hope is we just get back to normal and the unpredictability of the IndyCar championship comes back in 2026.
For sure. All right, let's talk about St. Pete's, and as we get set for the weekend and practice kicking off just under 2 hours from right now. So taking a look at the weekend schedule. First practice, 1:30 Eastern for IndyCar on FS2 Sirius XM 218, which I got a free trial of Sirius XM 218, so probably catch some IndyCar driving back and forth during my commute, which is about an hour for my job. So we'll see what I can catch today or just throughout the season. Practice 2, 9:30 a.m. on FS1. Also, everything on IndyCar Live internationally, and then IndyCar Radio as well. Qualifying for IndyCar 4:30 in the afternoon on FS2 on Saturday afternoon. Warm up 9 a.m. FS1 on Sunday morning, and then we'll have the lights race. We'll go green at 10:06 a.m. on FS1, and then IndyCar coverage starts at noon on Fox. 12:29 green flag for the 100-lap Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg on Sunday afternoon. So, who's your pick? Who's your pick to get the win to start the season?
I could be boring and go with the guy that got off to little did we know when he won last year, the dominant performance we'd see out of Alex Palou. I'm not going to go Alex Palou. I'm going to go Kyle Kirkwood.
Okay.
Wins at St. Pete.
If there's a team to pick on a street course, it's Andretti, right? So I like the pick. I'm going to go, I want to go boring, but I also don't want to be boring. So I'm going to go with, let's see. It's tough early on because we don't really have a good feel for who's done what yet either. I'm going to go with...
does Scott Dixon finally get a win at St. Pete?
Yeah, that's a good pick. I'm gonna go with a first-time winner. I'm gonna go with Marcus Armstrong. I'm gonna go right from the jump. They've had pace at this track before, so I'm gonna go with Marcus Armstrong. And of course, we're all gonna expect Palou to win, so we got to pick someone else to make it interesting for ourselves. But that's a look at our preview for the Firestone GP of St. Petersburg. If you agree or disagree with us, we'd love for you to interact with us. You can always find us on social media on Twitter/X. Our handle is IndyCar Podcast. On Facebook, just search for New Track Record. On Instagram, it is IndyCar Podcast as well. You can email us, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your questions, thoughts, concerns, what have you, our way. Also, don't forget to sign up for the New Track Record Podcast Fantasy League on Grid Rival. I'll tweet out that link again. It's also on our Facebook page as well, but make sure you sign up for that. Picks, I think, lock in at noon on Sunday, so you still have some time to make your picks, obviously, ahead of race 1. And thanks to everyone who's joined. There will be prizes. You'll get to have an interview on the podcast in the off season. We'll send you a sticker. We'll send you a trading cards of some early 90s retro ones and some current day trading cards as well, and of course bragging rights amongst the group. We have over 100 signed up, so really excited for this year with IndyCar Fantasy. Deep field indeed. Also, you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/newtrackrecord. Thanks to Reed, thanks to Rob, and others for their support. And as always, download and listen on your favorite podcasting platform, whether that is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. Okay, mailbag time and a few things to get to. Not a ton this week as it's the calm before the storm. We start with the Independent Officiating Board, where there are no changes. And I get it, it's the first year, but it seems like they stalled implementing this so they wouldn't have to change anything. And they're still trying to hire a managing director, I believe. So that's still in the crosshairs. And they're working on the laser measurement thing that will happen for 2028. And teams are already buying equipment and, trying to test that out ahead of time. But it just feels like they stalled this in the offseason so they wouldn't have to change anything. And this is where we're at. But few replies. Lynn_IndyCar said, I'm okay with it because how many of these types of employees are out there? Probably not many. They're not looking for employees who do work in accounting, pretty specialized field. Yes, but you can pull from NASCAR. You can pull from IMSA. I mean, you can pull from MX5 Cup. You can pull from Ferrari GT Challenge. Like
WEC.
Yeah, WEC. I mean, F1. I mean, there are plenty of series to pull from. Jeremy from HBG said they're the same picture, the office gif of Pam. And also said the funniest thing that could happen is they catch Cindric cheating again. Indy 500 fan 1 said they're still on the Penske payroll, right? I would have made it one person from Honda, one from GM, one from Delora, paid by their employer but on loan to IndyCar. I would throw in Firestone as well. I actually do like that idea. That is fascinating in terms of the board aspect of it. But yeah, it's same as it ever was. Hopefully something does change and we feel like there's a shift forward for 2026 with that. Elsewhere on the mailbag, I think there was a couple other posts. Let's see. That actually is it. So, here we go. A couple of comments. First off, from Poet Shevchenko, we have our rating to match or beat for the Indy 500 this year, and that was Fox getting 7.489 million viewers for the Daytona 500, up 11% over 2025. I mean, IndyCar was right there, so I think it's possible to get there. But, that is a high bar. And then also some people had some questions about Indy Lights. First off, Poet Shevchenko said, for the 26th season, IndyCar is set to have 25 full season entries, and Indy Lights set to have 24. When's the last time, if ever, the IndyCar and its top feeder series have had entry counts so close? And actually, thank one of our listeners, Brady BC3 said, this is from Adri Fernandez. And I got to double check. Is this... No, not the former driver. Okay. Says this happened the last time Indy Next/Lights had more than 21 cars, which is the early portion of 2009. IndyCar had 20 to 23 at regular events that year. Lights started at 27, petered out to 16 to 19 due to the crisis, talking about the recession. Both had 21 cars at the Glen the last time that happened. And then this from Brady BC3. Love the manufacturer charters, but I got to thinking about it. If in 3, 6, 9, 12, 24 years, one of the manufacturers does decide to leave, IndyCar will have to pay them millions in the charter buyback. They will be stuck without millions in an OEM. Yeah, that's the part I don't understand on how all this works. And maybe we'll get more answers. Like, it's one thing for teams to sell charters, right? And to new teams, and that being a thing, which, man, that really sucks for Prima not having charters, right? But it's another for manufacturers. So unless IndyCar can convince a Toyota, for example, to come in and replace a Honda, like, are they just out the money, like he said? I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like, let's say the charter for the OEMs is, I don't know, $10 million. And do you sell it back to the series? But the series is like, we're not going to pay for your charter. I don't know how that works, but I don't know. They must understand more than we do, and they were enticed by it, and that's one of the major reasons why Chevy and Honda have re-up. So we don't get it, but they get it, and they're happy, and that's all that matters.
For sure. All right, news and notes time. We'll rattle through several things. Let's take a look at this. Is maybe a minor story on paper, but in reality, I think it's a huge deal. And it's Fox Sports is giving IndyCar a bandwidth boost for a better broadcast tools. I think this is a huge deal. Think about all the issues we had with timing and scoring last year because of internet. Well, they have boosted the internet essentially, and it's a lot more competitive and in line. So hopefully we don't see all those issues throughout 2026. And then to throw on, we're going to have 6 driver's eye and at least 14 in-car cameras at every track. With the driver's eye being expanded, you're going to need more bandwidth for 2026.
Yes.
So obviously a good story, but underrated as well.
Yeah, we looked at last year, early in the season. We said, okay, Fox is figuring it out, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they don't get much leeway this year. They figured things out as they went on and stuff like that, but we can't have the errors that we had last year in terms of timing and scoring, and so upping the bandwidth should help in that regard.
Also, Firestone's new Enlighten technology, which is they've replaced the Waiuli. No green sidewall tires this year. It'll be red sidewall with the Enlighten technology for IndyCar tires in 2026. These
Waiuli era, we hardly knew you.
Yeah, Waiuli, goodbye. But these are now use renewable soybean oil. Replace petroleum-based oils, use in tire compounds, recycled steel, that for the bead wire in the tires, and recycled carbon black. Firestone says that is reinforcement material recovered from end-of-life tires. So this is the next step in the evolution of sustainability for Firestone. But no more green sidewall tires. Couple sponsor news.
I feel like that was good. You know, right when we just started getting used to green tires instead of red, they flip it back on us.
Yes, which I'm fine with because it was confusing. So a couple sponsor news. So Envy, which is a bicycle composite part manufacturer based out of Utah. I mentioned that is Mick Schumacher's sponsor. They will be a season-long associate sponsor. Solo, like Red Solo Cup, they're back with Alex Palou as associate sponsors for the entire season, so that's exciting. That was a fun livery last year.
Nice.
It'll be Tom Petty radio of SiriusXM on the 60 car, so that would be Rosenquist for St. Pete. And then also Meyer Shank. This might be in contention for one of the best liveries of the year. Marcus Armstrong will run Remax, the real estate company, for Long Beach and Nashville. And man, that red, white, and blue car looks amazing. It's very cool.
Yeah, very much does. Really sharp.
So there's some sponsor news. Obviously, the spotter guide is up, so there's a lot of livery changes you'll have to get familiar with for 2026. Let's get to some rules things. So we talked about the IOB and really no changes there. But then also now teams will have to make an extra pit stop at street courses with new tire usage requirements for this year. There's also a flap on cars to limit airborne crashes at the Indy 500 on the rear wheel ramp above that. So they made some changes there. But basically, it's going to be slim pickings outside of rookies early on for street course practices.
Yeah, which is, it's always a problem or an issue, but they talk about Sebring being a very similar to a street course in terms of bumpiness and stuff like that. But nothing can simulate, the close confines and lack of runoff area and stuff like that of a street course. So it's very much learned by fire, and these rookies are very much going to have to do it. And we'll see, and everybody, for that matter. The margin for error, of course, is very, very slim. So that's always one of the things, and what impresses me when St. Pete isn't a crash fest, is when your first race is on a street course, and at St. Pete, it's been like that for a long time, and you have drivers that have really been chomping at the bit, and inexperience out there is to be able to sling it around St. Pete and not have yellow after yellow after yellow. So hopefully we have another one of those races. We just need just enough yellows to keep it interesting, right?
Yes, and it started with a bang last year. And so the rule requirement, so drivers must complete 2 green flag laps on each of the alternate sets and the primary to comply with the rules. So obviously they want people to use the alternates more. The other aspect is the IOB and race control are going to be more aggressive in trying to clear lapped cars in front of leaders in late race restarts, which, that's always a good thing. I think we're on board with that as well for being positive news going forward.
Very much so.
Some sponsor news on the race weekend front. It is now the Snap-on IndyCar weekend at the Milwaukee Mile, so Snap-on is back on board for both races with the doubleheader. So that's good news. There'll be the Snap-on Makers and Fixers 250 on August 29th, and then the Snap-on Milwaukee Mile 250 on August 30th. Ticket renewals are actually already underway. Weekend tickets on sale for Nashville with the Borchetta Bourbon Music City GP at Nashville Super Speedway, so that underway as well. Let's talk about this weekend a little bit more. We have, I've never heard of this person. Randy Pinkow will ride the fastest seat in sports. Do you know who that is?
An influencer? I've never heard of him either, but
Yeah.
Get them influencers in seats, have them social it out.
Okay, so he's in the Netflix series Outer Banks. I've heard of the show, but he's from Ketchikan, Alaska. Yeah, he's from Ketchikan, Alaska, so that's cool. But he was in Outer Banks, which ironically, I guess, was filmed in South Carolina, not North Carolina. But that makes sense because South Carolina, I think, has better filming incentives for movies and TV. So I guess that's not a huge shocker.
Gotcha.
And then this one we're excited about. John Gruden will be the Grand Marshal for St. Pete this weekend. Spider 2Y Banana. Did I say that right?
Yeah, buddy. Yes. Now, I don't know if he does those unboxing things from different universities and stuff. Did he send him a package, and that's kind of started the relationship? I wonder how this came about.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I mean, it makes sense. He coached the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, won a Super Bowl with them, and maybe he even lives in the area. So I thought that was really cool to have him a part of this weekend. A little bit of talk about the Indy 500. The open test days are set April 28th and 29th, and the ticket unveiled with Alex Palou on it. It is Palou standing up, pointing, kind of with a backdrop of him celebrating. And then there'll also be April 21st, an evening with Alex Palou. Doug Bowles will host a Q&A with Palou at the IMS Museum. Tickets on sale for members now. Actually, they're on sale for the general public as well as of yesterday. So that coming up on April 21st. So a couple of cool things that they're doing with Palou ahead of the Indy 500, which we expect to sell out reserve seats in early May. That seems to be the growing trend.
Which is absolutely outstanding.
Yes. And the Snake Pit is set as well. Forgot to mention this. Zed is the headliner, and I've heard of Zed. So I could check the box. Another year I've actually heard of a Snake Pit artist. So that's good. And then there's Crankdat, Wooly, it's Murph, and I can't even read the other name on the graphics, so I'm going to have to pull this up.
I don't think I've heard of any of those. Not even Zed. You're so hip, Caleb.
Yeah, so you're in that category. Is this multiple years in a row now that you've not heard of the full list?
Oh yeah, I don't think I've heard of anybody since Shaq was there.
Okay, well, that's all right.
I've been left behind. I'm in the weird age between like the Carb Day concerts and the Snake Pit.
Yes.
Where I'm like, Carb Day is kind of like the majority, and it's starting to change, but like for the longest time it was like, wow, this is for my parents type concerts. And then Snake Pit is kind of like, well, these are for my kids type concerts. I'm stuck in the middle.
That's fair. So that's
It's all good.
The update there. A few other things. Dario Franchitti and Scott Dixon, which Dario is doing the trucks race this weekend, don't forget. They want to do a Mazda MX-5 Cup race, possibly at Daytona or St. Pete. So I think that would be awesome. You have John Maskey has been named the Indy Lights race director starting in St. Pete. Previously race director for GT World Challenge America, McLaren Trophy America, and Porsche Sprint Challenge North America. So they got that name locked down. We talked about other names and people involved with St. Pete. Let's talk about Barber real fast. The 2026 Grand Marshal, Dale Murphy, former Atlanta Braves great, two-time NL MVP, will be the Grand Marshal for Barber this year, so that's pretty cool.
Yes, very much so. I remember Dale Murphy with the Atlanta Braves back when the two teams you could watch all the time was the Atlanta Braves on CBS and the Cubs on WGN.
Right.
I got to know a lot of Atlanta Braves randomly.
For sure. Slightly before my time, I think. I do not remember watching him play. Let's talk the racer mailbag. Not a whole lot in this week's edition, but let's talk the highlights. There's always at least something to discuss. And I pull up our mailbag notes. New tire rule will mean even more sitting and doing nothing on Friday street course practices, which we discussed. And the video game is still set for release.
Interesting to see today, too, just how that affects.
Yes.
I mean, it's the first race. You'd expect people on track, right? Limited track time in the winter time. But you hope you see that. But if we don't today, I mean, that's indicative that that rule change is even affecting even more the run time on Fridays.
And then also the IndyCar video game is still set for a release in the second half of this year.
And Marshall Pruitt said that could be July 1, it could be December 31st. You don't really know. It's a wide range when you talk about the second half of the year. But I remember Formula One game last year, I think, came out in, I want to say, October of last year. So hopefully we get some additional details in the coming months about exactly not when it's coming out, but if we can get some, in-game video or some photos, something, because it's been absolutely nothing since the thing has been announced.
Hopefully something by May. I think that if there's nothing by May, I'd start to be concerned. Indy Lights news. So the Lights lineup is complete, and Alexander Kariba will join Juncos. That was the final remaining seat that had not been filled for St. Pete. So a full grid for Lights, and we'll see. I mean, Lights seems like it's going to be pretty competitive with a lot of drivers this year as well. IndyCar announced partnerships.
I'm looking forward to watching Lights again this year.
What?
I'm looking forward again to watching Lights this year. It's just, it's been a couple years, but gosh, it's so much more entertaining when there's a healthy field. Let me tell you.
Yes, there is, for sure. International broadcast rights, obviously IndyCar Live, the main thing, but new partnerships for Brazil, IndyCar back on Band Sport, which is good. I believe that's like over the air as well, if I'm not mistaken. Other changes, I believe TSN back with Canada, which I know Canadian fans are probably not thrilled about that one. A new partnership, it will at least in its second year for Austria, Switzerland, and Germany, obviously, with Mick Schumacher on board. That should get a lot more coverage. And then Indy Lights will also have coverage across the globe in Poland. Now, I thought this was cool. I can't even pronounce the name of the channel, but Timek Kaczarczyk, I'm sure I butchered that, but he's Polish. He's going to be in Lights. Fans will be able to stream the races at a URL which just features his name.pl for Poland. Rev TV will broadcast throughout Canada. ESPN will showcase Lights races to fans in Latin America and Brazil. More coverage, Sky Sports in the UK and Italy, Viaplay in the Nordics, and Sport TV in Portugal. So they're expanding things internationally, which is always good to see. Let's see, a few other small things before we wrap it up. First off, we have, let's find it here. Arne Stribben pointing this out. So Simona Di Silvestro competing in bobsled in the Olympics. First person to compete in an Indy 500 and an Olympic Games. Remember, Alex Zanardi was a Paralympian, but didn't race in the Indy 500. He raced in kart, during the split era. I thought that was a fascinating pull there by Arnie. Good stuff there. Also, let's get to a couple. There's one more. And Teo Porcher, former IndyCar driver, is joining Mercedes as a development driver for their F1 team. So good for him to land a gig. Let's talk a little NASCAR, IndyCar stuff, and potential races. So first off, this quote, and I think you sent me this. NASCAR President Steve O'Donnell on trying to grow the series. When I started at NASCAR, we were chasing IndyCar. And the goal was, if we can just kind of surpass IndyCar, and we did that, and I told our employees, I think we all got a little lazy. I mean, NASCAR has surpassed IndyCar. I mean, it's been 30 years now. So I just think, like, what a ridiculous quote to say, I guess, in my opinion. And he joined NASCAR in 1996. Well, they are already ahead after that year. So I don't know. I thought that was silly.
I mean, with the split, it pretty much, obviously, pushed NASCAR to the forefront. And that NASCAR's heyday was, the 2000s through the, I'd say, what would you say, early 2010s, everybody was building racetracks and all that stuff. I think NASCAR did a great job in sustaining the momentum that was artificially created for them by the split. I will give them credit for that. But to think that it was all them, that is kind of laughable, or it is actually very highly laughable.
The timing was perfect. You had Dale Sr. still winning races and competing for championships, and then you had Jeff Gordon burst onto the scene, amongst other names. Those were the two names, right, of that era in the mid to late 90s. And that coincided with IndyCar going to the split. I mean, the timing was everything, and the timing was obviously very lucky. This one, and Hickey 93 found this. This is on the Racers Unchained episode, and former Champ Car part owner Paul Gentilozzi said, talking about on selling Champ Car to Tony George, said, "We didn't know how close the George family was to stopping the IRL. Had we gone one more year, they would have quit." I just want to throw my hands up at that quote. You're telling me we could have had the DPO1 if we just would have made it one more year?
Yeah, I don't know if I buy that, really.
Well, and the other thing is, this is Paul Gentilozzi, who, if I'm not mistaken, the guy who lost a lawsuit to Ryan Hunter-Reay for, not paying him, among other things. So this was one of the sketchier guys in IndyCar / kart in recent memory.
I mean, it wasn't like kart all of a sudden disappeared at its peak. I mean, it was a slow death.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it was.
Teams.
It was 5-6 years. I mean, you had
so
Texas 2001 really seemed to be the first real nail in the coffin where it's like, oh, like that's really bad. And I mean, you got to remember, like that was their first race there. They'd sold a ton of tickets. Like people were excited about it. And then you don't even host a race. I mean, that's going to leave a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths of, well, I'm not going to follow this anymore. Or, that was maybe their first race. So you have that. I mean, that to me was the big thing. And you can go back and read Indy Split by John Oriovitz, talk about other factors. But to me, that was the first real notable thing. And I know there are things behind the scenes going on at that point, but that really hurt their future.
Yeah, it just seemed like a stupid quote because IRL was definitely fledgling, but it was slowly year after year becoming more of a entity and then kart. I mean, maybe early for the IRL, but by the time kart exited, it was clear which one was in the more powerful position.
No, the IRL was clearly more powerful by 2003, if not 2002. Once Penske and at the time Andretti Green and Ganassi all came over, I mean, that was it for kart and then Champ Car. This from Will Buxton. So I don't know if you saw this, but MotoGP is not going to race at Phillip Island in Australia. And he said, IndyCar race at Phillip Island, anyone? Latch on to a race at Bathurst or Surfers and stop off in New Zealand for a triple header. Not like we don't have drivers who pull a crap. Look, we'd all love for IndyCar to go back to Australia. I don't know if that's a realistic option, but man, I would love to see it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would. I also have yet to watch Speed with Kevin Harvick and Will Buxton.
No, I haven't either.
I've seen some good reviews, but I'm going to have to check it out.
For sure. All right, so
Morrison agrees.
Yes, I think that catches. Oh, we forgot our 3 key stats for St. Pete from Chad 200, Chad Smith. Dixon, 11 top fives, including 5 runner-up finishes, led 127 laps, best average finishing position, 7.3, never won here. Power, 9 poles, qualified on the front row 12 times. Nobody's led more laps, 269 in the history of the race. Below is a win, a runner-up, and 4 top 10s, but has never made the Firestone Fast 6 in his 6 qualifying attempts, 10.7 average starting position. That is a wild stat at the end. Pelot's never made the Fast 6, so keep those things in mind for this race. But we talked about it earlier. Is this the year Dixon finally wins at St. Pete? We shall see. All right, no tweets of the week. There was nothing that was really jumping out at me IndyCar related. But let's get to our random split era driver of the week.
All right, random split era driver of the week. When we talk about French drivers in IndyCar, I mean, it really begins and ends with Sébastien Bourdais, right? 4-time champion, and could have some company this year if Alex Palou can have another huge year. But a guy that had some token starts in the split era, both in kart and a single start in the IRL, was Mr. Nicolas Manassian.
Ah, yes.
Who is a French racing driver of Armenian descent. He got his start in France, Formula Renault, Formula 3 in France, did Formula 3000. He did Supernova racing at Silverstone, which was a big deal at the time. He never was able to secure a Formula One drive, at least early in his career, so he drove for Target Chip Ganassi Racing, partnering with Bruno Junqueira in the 2001 season, and had 6 starts in that 2001 campaign, the first 6 races. The best finish of 8th at Long Beach was his best finish. And then he also did the Indianapolis 500 that year with Target Chip Ganassi Racing, a 22nd place qualifying position in his G-Force Oldsmobile, a 29th place finish. And that was it. 2001 was it. He actually in 2002 did the ASCAR Racing Series, the NASCAR without the N, apparently, which was a stock car racing series that raced at circuits around the UK and Europe for 2001 and 2008. He also did the 24 Hours of Le Mans a couple times and V8 supercars as well. Never did finish towards the top in Le Mans, and did some WeatherTech sports car racing at Daytona and Sebring as recently as 2016 with Dragon Speed at Sebring in 2016. So that's a familiar name. And that was it. He founded a management company in France, which represents drivers including in WEC, and also is a manager of Franco Colapinto.
Ah, yes.
Who is a current F1 driver with Alpine. And correct me if I'm wrong, race in IndyCar.
Well, there we go. Nicolas Manassian.
So,
definitely remember him back in the day.
Yeah, so Nicolas Manassian, 7 total races in that 2001 season. Just one of those names that you don't associate with Chip Ganassi Racing, but 2001 was very much a part of that team. He was 2001 and done, a native of Marseille, France, 52 years old, Frenchman, Nicolas Manassian, this week's Random Split Era Driver of the Week.
All right. That does it for us. For Justin Kinney, I'm Caleb Hatch. We'll be back next week to recap the first race of the 2026 NTT IndyCar Series season, the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Thanks so much for joining us. This has been another edition of New Track Record Podcast.